If you are creating something and there's no conflict, you're doing it wrong. If you're creating a product and someone says everything's perfect, I love every choice you've made, you've got the wrong team, right? It's out of the fire, out of that conflict. Ideas will come. I think conflict is required, but it has to be constructive and reined in. It can't be destructive.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are changing the way that business happens in cities like Miami, Florida. I'm Tyler Kelly, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Leanne Buchanan.
Hey, everybody.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you, too.
So today we're really excited because we're joined by Riyaad Seecharan.
Pleasure to be here, Tyler.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Hi, Riyaad. How you doing today?
Hey, Leanne.
So I'm really excited for this conversation, as you can probably tell. And for those that are just going to get to know you, we're going to talk about what you do in a moment, but we're going to start with who you are. And so as Tyler just mentioned from the outset, you are a serial entrepreneur. You've got about 20 plus years of experience in leading high performing teams and product development. And unlike a lot of entrepreneurs that I've met, you've actually been successful in terms of having exits to Microsoft, JC Flowers, and Rev 360.
Wow.
So I'm so excited to talk a little bit about, what you have learned along the way. But first off, what is it that you're most passionate about?
Wow. So I think that's changed over time. So there are periods of my life when I was passionate about performance, like human performance. Now I'm looking to sort of be more aligned in the world. So I used to look inside a lot, meaning try to adjust or frame inside. Now where I'm at is I'm trying to balance, for example, relationships with my parents, with my siblings, with my colleagues, coworkers, and friends. So it's more external at this particular point in time. But 10 years ago, it was all internal work, right? That was it.
So I love that you mentioned relationships, and you and I have spoken about this, and I think Tyler and I have spoken about this as well. A lot of people don't realize that relationships are probably the most important driver of business success. Talk to us a little bit about maybe the most important relationships in your life right now and how they impact your work.
Oh, wow. There's that adage that the 6 people you surround yourself, those are the habits and behaviors you're most likely to emulate, right? I have been very fortunate because after years of kissing frogs, I have found, princesses, right? So my current business partners, they're people that have they've been able to be like catalysts for me. They make me better, right? So for us, we went through this many exercises, Myers-Briggs, we did Strengths Finders, a lot of psychometric profiles. The end goal was when you find somebody that makes you better, that's kind of when you can be very successful. So currently, I'd say that the people I surround myself with are people that make me better. They're patient with me. They know my vulnerabilities. They know that, I might be late to this thing, but the other skills I bring make up for those things, and vice versa. So that's a very rare thing to find. I have had probably 20 or 25 different business partners before I found the right team.
I love that you talked about your team, which is something rare when we talk to entrepreneurs in terms of the most important relationship that they've had. But maybe walk us through what are the characteristics of this amazing team that makes them work so well together?
So,
and I think I know some of them.
So I'll say this: when you can express anger constructively to an individual, and they understand that in the heat of the moment, why is this not up? What's going on? And they understand it's not a reflection or an indictment of their behavior, but someone expressing an emotion. Then you have something special, right? So when one or a team of people can constructively express non-positive emotions, right? There you have the ability to, so empathy, grace, kindness, those things allow us to continue to operate in a place where we don't lose respect for one another, the thing that happens typically is I express my anger at you, maybe non-constructively. You begin to resent me. And over time, that adds up. And then what happens is the relationship, the orbits decay, right? And then we're not in a place where we can achieve a task, we can achieve a goal or an objective together because we don't value one another. So I think we work very hard to be able to say, look, I love you, but you did this really poorly. You may want to reconsider how you tackle this particular problem. And so we can skip the I love you after the 5th time, but it's not a negative or an indictment of an individual, right? So that's the first thing. There's other things. Obviously, people have to have the same reference, the same values. The world, ideally, they have similarities, but I think that's incredibly important. Can we have a difficult conversation? And can we be respectful after that?
Yeah, I think in this day and age, we tend to retract from tension or conflict, fearing that it's bad or negative, whereas it could actually be very constructive and very positive.
Yeah, I think conflict is the heart of, if you are creating something and there's no conflict, you're doing it wrong. If you're creating a product and someone says, everything's perfect, I love every choice you've made, you've got the wrong team, right? It's out of the fire, out of that conflict, ideas will come. We can talk to one another and go disagree. I think conflict is required, but it has to be constructive and reined in. It can't be destructive.
So 3 successful exits, which is, that's what we see as like the success story. What happened before that? I'm sure there were many failures, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of failures. I could count. I think I counted once. I've been in 32 different jobs.
Wow.
Right. I've had 20 different business partners, meaning 20 different businesses, 3 of which have been very successful, 2 of which I've personally led with the team. And so it's sort of really interesting. And without my business partners, though, I don't think I would be there. So it's kind of that I think you need the people. It's not. I don't think it's an individual thing. It's not an individual sport. I always say that we would never be where we are without all of us.
Does it get easier, like each time? Like, will you the next process, or will you just tackle something completely?
There's this
outside your
idea
comfort zone?
of thin slicing, which is the more you do something, the quicker you can analyze and frame it. I think for us, yeah. So like right now, we've got a couple of things cooking that obviously it's a little early to talk about, but we have a SaaS company, we have a services company. So yeah, it's really interesting to sort of contemplate the world, right? Because after you've had some successes, you begin to think things are easier. So I don't know if it's true or not, but certainly you're biased that way.
So you gave us some big numbers in terms of number of companies and number of business partners. What's your favorite failure? Because you learn something from every failure. So what's your favorite one?
There was this company that I set up to do dividend reinvestment planning. And what was so cool about it was there was a woman that wanted me to go to New York. She offered me a job to come and run her company on the basis of seeing what I'd done. But it was a complete failure. I spent $7,000 on writing this software with a group of people offshore. Probably shouldn't have done that. I got it up and running, and what I realized was I was out of my depth. I might have known the technical components of it, but the financial pieces I didn't, and I should have gone to New York and partnered with that woman, but I didn't for whatever reason, and sort of the company fell apart. So a year later, $7,000 less, you kind of go, oh, okay, you need to put this down. So knowing when to stop was hard, right?
So I think you've hit on a good point, Riyaad. Sometimes it's difficult to know when to kind of cut ties, put something to bed, let it die, have a funeral.
Yes.
We talk a lot about failures, F-ups, and funerals in kind of my world. And I'd love to know from your perspective, having had so many not successful ventures and some successful ventures, like what are, like, if you had to give me, like, what are the indicators that maybe it's time to try something else? Well,
what's interesting is over the last 15 years, we as a society have kind of codified like an innovation framework, right? If you think about 20 years ago, the best things were like maybe crossing the chasm. Like you had these models, but you didn't have this idea, for example, like lean startup, right? Experiment quickly, figure out if it's going to work. Where to put your focus is kind of the challenge as an entrepreneur. And we've gotten better at figuring out where to put our focus and telling the message to the average individual. It's not hard to figure out where to put the focus, right? If you read Lean Startup, you'll get a sense of, oh my God, maybe I need to think about marketing and sales before I think about the product, because that's going to help me determine if I'm viable or not, right? And I think what's happened is what used to be esoteric knowledge is now commonplace. So it's more accessible. So when I started, I was looking for knowledge. Part of the journey was like, I'd find like a framework, like the Dublin framework, and I'd go nuts because it made all the sense to me. The basic premise is distribution is what determines how successful you are, right? Okay, it sounds simple, right? I didn't know that when I was doing my startups. So you kind of find these ideas, and what's so wonderful now is that they're so accessible, right? So when you ask what every idea that I had to internalize was hard fought. Again, even knowing something, so someone telling you something and you knowing it, internally having a mental model, having a sort of a dimensionality to that idea, that is a rare thing. I can tell you, listen, to be successful, you need to do this. Well, you're not going to do that, right? That's a human experience. So the failures, they've given me that dimensionality, right? That's what I'd say to you.
So does it get easier on the flip side to know when to step out of something that you've put your time, energy, money into? Are you able to make that decision quicker when it's not working with experience?
I'd argue that that's a tough one, because you get attached to your ideas. You think they're you might think they're brilliant when they're not. I'd argue that that's a problem I have. So surrounding yourself with people that are critical is kind of the litmus test for that, right? Everybody has to kind of weigh in and say, do we want to go charge off in that direction and do this thing? And I think that's really helped me a lot. So my business partners, I go back to them, Ali and Umberto, you've met them. They've helped me sort of distill. Like I'm like, let's go tackle that market over there. And they're like, are you insane? Why would we go there? Here's X, Y, Z, why we shouldn't go there, right? So I think it's that mechanism of regulation. The group regulates itself. And again, we're not perfect, but I think we have that sensibility.
There's a lot of research in the kind of entrepreneurial space that talks about one of the largest reasons for startup failure is not having the right team fit, not having the right founding team, where you either have a solopreneur who thinks that they can know it. And so I really appreciate what you shared, the insights of having those balancing pieces and being able to weigh on each other's strengths. Stepping outside of the startup world for a second, to you as a person, what's one fact that maybe I know but others wouldn't know about you that you want to share with the world, or even if you don't? But that was a nudge.
You know just about everything there is to know. I don't know what I'd say.
What's
there.
an interesting fact that Tyler doesn't know?
Well, we just met.
Yeah. I'm at a loss there. Maybe I really enjoy working with kids. I don't think you know that about me. So
yes.
I do a lot of work in the community with kids. It gives me a lot of joy. So I don't think of it as work. So that's sort of unfair, right? I'm doing something that placates my needs. It just so happens to be there. So I really, really enjoy interacting with kids. I like teaching children. So I studied martial arts. I try to teach martial arts, or sometimes it's programming or whatnot. So that's something
You studied martial arts?
I have, yes.
To what degree?
So people consider the black belt to be the beginning of the journey. So I'm a beginner in the sense that I have a black belt. Yeah.
Then I don't know what that makes me, but
Well, not ready to study. Black belt means you're ready to study. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is it time?
Is it time
Is it time?
for the lightning round?
Oh dear.
Are you ready?
I could be.
Well, you're about to find out. Tyler, how about you kick it off?
If you could run your own country, what would it be like?
Oh God. It would start off as like 1940s South Korea, and it would be Korea as it stands today.
Why?
Well, I think if you look at if you consider, like, for example, in the 60s post-colonization, the average GDP of some of those countries that were colonies and then became independent, and you look at the progress that they've made today, it's far and above. Korea's sort of done an exemplary, like, so look at Singapore and Jamaica. They both had the same GDP in 62. One is not, hasn't ascended. One is at the heights of sort of the first world, right? Why is that? That's a separate conversation.
That's a great question.
I know. I think it's, well, we're in the lightning round, but I would say leadership. So, what is one of the kindest things someone has ever done for you?
Oh dear. My mom. So, this was in 2008. I had really difficult time. I didn't know what I was going to do. And she's like, look, you can stay at my house. I won't tell anybody how old you are. You can stay at my house. And for the next few years I stayed there. Even as we started that first company that we sold out of CIC, I was there. She didn't have to do that. She didn't have to do that at all. And I was in a rough spot.
What did you learn from your biggest regret?
I learned to see it not as a regret, but as an essential part of who I am. So I experienced a loss very early on, and I think it challenged my perspective. And now when I look back at it, I wouldn't be who I am today without that loss, right? So that was 10, 20 years ago. I'd be like wringing my hands going, why, God, why? And now I'm like, thank you, God, thank you. Yeah.
What do you spend too much time doing?
Reading about technology. I have a problem. I acquire information for the sake of acquiring information. I need help.
Or perhaps one of your strengths is input.
No, I mean, there's no reason I need to know about, chip fab technology or what like, why is a giraffe's tongue black? There's no reason.
All right, what does the world need more of?
Empathy. We need to figure out how to be more empathy, and we need to structure how we do that. I look, and I know that it changes over time, but I think we can't have enough empathy.
What or who are you grateful for?
My family. I wouldn't be here. So my grandmother couldn't read, right? She couldn't read. She made her living off of 5 acres of land in Trinidad, right? So no college degree. My mom went to like a technical college, and now all of her children have degrees. My brother just graduated with his PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. He's got 2 Ivy League degrees. Like, think about that. Can't read, couldn't write. You make your living selling crops. So third world development, right? To the opportunities that have been afforded by being in the U.S. So if think about that. I wouldn't be here. I would be, I don't know, what would I be doing? Probably like reading books in the library, getting yelled at in Trinidad. I mean, talk about luck. How lucky am I, right?
I love it.
Well, with that, how can people get in touch with you? Social media, website, all that good stuff.
Oh, I'm a bit of
Or your company.
a recluse or a Luddite. You can find us at tesserhealth.com. What we do, obviously, is manage prescription healthcare drugs for companies. We reduce the cost of medications for employees. But yeah, I think Leanne's probably got the best contact info.
Awesome. Well, I am really excited that we had this conversation because every single time we have a conversation, I learn something new. It gives me some insight about the world, life, and also myself. So thank you so much for joining us, Riyaad.
Oh, you're so gracious. Thank you,
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Tyler.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins.